Hello and welcome to the Slingshot channel, or should I say medieval criticism channel. Alright, in my last video I showed you this method of mine to master the 170 pound longbow, and I think I successfully did so with a very simple construction and even adding a typical instant Legolas repeating sliding magazine. I was able to turn this into a completely different weapon. But of course I got a lot of Wisebutts and also serious critics that actually gave me input and feedback and so on, and I just wanted to take the time to respond as per usual. So here it goes. So first, a lot of people said, well, this is why don't you turn it into a gastraphetis? All you need to do is make it a little longer so you can put it down on the ground and cock it that way. Yes, of course, that would be possible. Actually, I could do that right now. Just shift it out, then turn it down to the ground, press down on it, and cock it that way. That would absolutely work. I would have to add a lock, and then I practically would have made a crossbow. So crossbows are not exactly new. There's so many crossbows already out there. I made a ton of those crossbows. So why would I benefit from turning a longbow into a crossbow? Also, Ian, the maker of this wonderful, beautiful bow, instructed me that it is not wise to keep one of these bows under tension for a longer period of time. It's just that the wood is really not suitable for this. So therefore, there's one more reason to not use this to make a crossbow. And there's plenty of people like Todd from Todd's workshop who managed to do beautiful replicas of medieval crossbows. I'm not into doing replicas. I'm trying to reinvent things. And here I wanted to reinvent the longbow. It's probably not 100% a success, but hey, it works, and it is a step towards progression. Now, the next big issue people had, actually I think I got most of the feedback about it, is here my armor test setup with the plywood and the 1mm steel sheet. Now, I know that medieval armor was different, that it was shaped to deflect the arrows and so on. I know all that, and I was not trying to replicate medieval armor. Others have done that, like Todd and Joe Gibbs together did a fabulous job on doing so. All I wanted to do is I wanted to have a setup that lets me compare the penetration effect of a medieval 170 pound longbow versus a modern 70 pound recurve bow. And therefore I used this one, and it was actually very clear that the penetration of the modern weapon was tons better than the penetration of the ancient longbow, even though the draw force was so much smaller, lower on the modern weapon. Plus also, I am absolutely sure that the armored chest plate that Todd tested was a masterpiece, and it's absolutely clear that such devices existed in medieval time, but absolutely not everybody was able to afford it. I think there have been a lot of people, even knights, that went into battle with something far cheaper, far thinner, because that was all they could afford. Then a lot of people said the difference in penetration only has to do with the geometry of the projectiles, saying that this one is much thicker and therefore penetration will be much worse. So therefore they said, even though this is just only a very harmless field tip and this is like a pointy and not blunt kind of bodkin, they said that is the difference. Well, we'll find out. Because we will simply trade projectiles, even though that is not without dangers, since see, the modern arrows are so much lighter that they're actually not recommended for the very heavy warbows. Heavy warbows have a disadvantage that they will never exceed a certain projectile speed, just because the retraction speed of the wood isn't that high. Therefore, I think it would be very, very hard to exceed like maybe 65 or 70 meters per second with a yew longbow. And if you make the bow stronger, then usually you go up in projectile weight to increase energy, since you cannot exceed the speed of the bow in itself. But if you shoot something too light from a heavy warbow, then there's always the danger that you may damage the weapon. And therefore I was very hesitant to do it, but so many people insist that it's just a different projectile that I have to give it a try. So bear with me and you know, cross your fingers, wish me luck so that the bow is not going to break. Now, of course, the magazine with the sled that I made for the longbow will not be able to hold one of these very thin, flimsy arrows of modern days. Therefore, I'm going back to my test device, which is nothing but just a little ring that I will attach to the frame that allows me to use a manual release to shoot the arrow at the target. So, here is the ring instead of the sled. And this is my two-handed medieval release that I'm going to use to draw the bow back. And let's see how it fares against the good old target. Okay. Okay, and all right, not bad. It did penetrate. What a surprise. So it clearly penetrated. Let's see how deep. Okay, the tip still sticks in. I guess that's normal. Penetration was clearly not as deep as the one from the compound bow, but still a lot deeper than the penetration of the war bow arrow. So, you wonder why they haven't used these arrows way back then. Maybe because they had no carbon fiber. Now we will do the other side of the test with the beautiful Liberty 1 bow, riserless, very small, compact 70-pound bow. And I'm using the warbow arrow, the same one that Ian sent me, with the exception that I added a modern day nock so that I can shoot it from this bow, since it only came with a half moon. Since it's more like a, in the Instant Legolas, it's more like a setup for a crossbow. It looks funny, doesn't it? This kind of ancient arrow in this super modern bow. Fire! Woo! It did penetrate, as you see, it's in here, and the tip broke off. And I have to say that the penetration is almost exactly identical to the penetration we got when we fired this thing from the 170-pound longbow. Therefore, I actually have to say, armchair engineers, you had it right, and I was wrong. I'm ready to admit it. It seems like the 70-pound modern bow has just about the same performance against this test setup, nothing else, than the 170-pound warbow. Very interesting result, don't you think? Now the bow itself seemed undamaged from the shot with the super light arrow, but it was certainly not good for the string. As you see, this string is now in need of replacement, which isn't a big deal, but still, you see, there is a reason why you should not use light projectiles with a heavy warbow. So before we go, I want to shoot one more carbon arrow, same type, against that target, since I forgot how deep it penetrated, and I don't want all these Wisebutts telling me that it was kind of the same penetration. So we'll fire it again. I'm too lazy to check out the old video. And fire. What happened? Seems like the shaft broke off, just like the wooden one. I think we need to remove this from the target to see how deeply it penetrated. Shouldn't be too hard. All right. Actually, I have to say that that is probably a little less deep than the penetration we had when we shot this arrow from the longbow. Therefore, again, I think that they're very even in penetration power into this test target, which is again not a simulation of medieval high-quality armor, okay? Anyway, I hope you enjoyed this little thing, because I've been proved wrong. You probably are. And anyway, hope you like this. Thanks and bye-bye.